stir that pot a little bit.
Rick is my favorite Letterman editor.
Whoa.
I'm going to be
That's good. That's good to hear.
I sent to Charleston and Myrtle Beach, Fly 5, and then WNBA.
Hello. Shut up. I'm glad you're here. Hey, I'm doing good. Yeah, good for you. I'm doing good.
But thanks so much for
It is. I always talk while I live stream. Okay. So, you guys, these are some of the leading.
Are you just walking along videotaping people?
I am on live streaming.
You're live streaming?
Yeah.
Oh.
And who are you?
Who am I? I don't know. I'm Frank Knapp.
And you represent?
I'm with the South Carolina Small Business Chamber of Commerce.
All right, awesome. Okay, great. You are.
Turn that thing around. I want a picture of you.
No, we're live streaming. We got 700. I got 750 viewers at the Trump protest. Wow. Okay, so not a bad idea. That's why I plugged into my power source.
A lot of people, when you come close to them, they get real quiet. They don't want to be.
Okay, we're joining already. We've got about 5 people joined us. You know.
So people are joining it on their computer.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And so and sometimes you know, and not often you can't even tell how large your audience is.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't realize I had 750 people with the other one. It's really good.
Yes, we met. Yes.
Ended up getting my job with theater. So everything I do, the angel.
What network are you with?
I'm with WLTX.
Okay. And when will this air? What time?
It'll be on tonight, 5, 6, or 7, one of those.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly.
All right.
Just watch them all. So.
Very good answer.
One day I'm going to figure out the white balance.
I put it on medium gain and I pressed it on
You want to run?
I'll probably put mine on. It's not going to do anything.
I have to do something else.
You didn't get that on purpose. There you go. That's why.
Down that side.
That one right here, and you'll say that.
I never been used to it. Okay.
It's really weird on the inside. I went with her to push more.
It just happened. Had like a big meeting.
You want me to do a mic check for you?
I don't know. He's good. But if there's lots and lots of questions,
Which one of those guys? The Republican or Democrat?
Well, there's two of them. Martin Luther King Day is happening on the 14th in Charleston is where all the Republican debates, and on the 17th in Charleston is the Democratic debate. Which candidates are debating is unclear at the moment.
Hey, Elaine. What's
Can
up?
you introduce yourself? We're live streaming.
Yeah, Hamilton Davis with the Coastal Conservation League.
Who do you think who's going to speak at the mic today?
Well, we've got some business leaders from the coast of South Carolina that are speaking in opposition to the current offshore drilling proposal and asking Governor Haley to change her position and push back and stand up for the state. So hopefully she'll listen.
It has a tremendous impact.
Well, you know, if it isn't climate change that's going to destroy it, it's plastic pollution is plastic. Because the fish are eating plastic.
I know.
Oh, the day before the next day.
Who are you with?
Coastal Carolina.
Awesome. Okay, great. We're live streaming.
Oh, hi everybody.
Most of these are small businesses.
How small?
Well, I mean, you know, these aren't corporations.
I mean, there.
Yeah, I think that's
There's some hotels.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's probably how I would characterize it.
Like,
Now already, but
I'm a one-person business, so I'm a small business. So. Yeah.
And do you live in Charleston?
I live on Sullivan's Island.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
How long do you live there?
Gosh, 34 years. The last one, about 3 years.
Right.
I grew up in Columbia. I'm a border baby.
I work at the beach.
be shy. Come on. I'm trying.
I want to welcome you here today. My name is Robert Barber. We are here to issue a statement from nearly 400 businesses and business associations throughout South Carolina who oppose seismic testing and offshore drilling off of our coast. And we call on Governor Haley to make sure that South Carolina is not included in the federal government's near-term plans for drilling. I came up here today because I'm a restaurant owner down on James Island. And what drilling would do potentially to me would be very devastating. And I brought something to show you today, something that's very dear to me that came probably 50 yards from my house. And I love oysters, and they're the most wonderful tasting oysters in the world, and these oysters would be threatened by this seismic testing and drilling. The other thing I brought was a hat that I wear most of the time, and I wore it the other day to the probate court with my mother. I kind of embarrassed her. But the reason I wear this hat is because of that shrimp on the front. And shrimp in South Carolina depend on good, clean, healthy water. Now, the effort that we're part of today is a nonpartisan effort fueled by diverse voices across our state and along the entire Atlantic coast. In addition to the business interests represented here today, more than 85 cities and counties along the Atlantic coast have spoken out against seismic testing and offshore drilling, including 23 municipalities representing the entire South Carolina coast. Just last week, our Congressman in 1st District, Mark Sanford, and Virginia Congressman Bobby Scott, along with 31 members of the Congress, or the House, sent a letter to the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management asking for a halt to the permitting process for potential seismic testing in the Atlantic. They are requesting a review to take into account the full extent of the impacts caused by seismic air gun testing. Now, I'm going to be the moderator today, and we have several business people we would like for you to hear from. And at the end, we'll provide an opportunity for questions of our speakers. First, I would like to introduce Peg Howell, who is president of Howell Consulting Group and a spokesperson for a coastal citizens grassroots effort called SODA, Stop Offshore Drilling in the Atlantic. Okay?
Good afternoon. I'm Peg Howell, president of Howell Consulting Group, a business consultancy that helps develop leaders for ever-changing times. I'm also a former petroleum engineer. In fact, I was the first woman company man to drill oil wells in the Gulf of Mexico. I was the person who supervised the oil rigs. I'm also a volunteer, as Robert said, with SODA, Stop Offshore Drilling in the Atlantic, a grassroots effort that started in Pawleys Island just this past February. I've spent most of the last 10 months educating citizens, business owners, industry associations, and elected representatives at every level of government about the hazards that offshore drilling will bring to our beautiful South Carolina coast. My comments today will reflect my experience in each of those three areas, as a business person, an offshore drilling engineer, and as a volunteer educator. My company, Howell Consulting Group, is a home-based business, a sole proprietorship that's networked with other consultants across the country. For over 21 years, I have consulted to top executives from Fortune 100 companies around the world. All one needs to run a home-based business is a computer, a telephone, the internet access, and transportation to your clients' offices, and of course, a home. Owners of home-based businesses choose where they want to live. 7 years ago, my husband and I chose Pawleys Island. Currently, more than 16 million people work from home in the United States, a number that's predicted to increase by 64% in the next 4 years. I know that when the South Carolina coast is threatened by damage from offshore drilling, this once beautiful place will no longer be an attractive choice to home-based businesses. We will take our businesses, our revenues, our tax dollars, and our homes elsewhere. We're here today because last year, 2014, our Governor, Nikki Haley, asked for our state to be included in the current plan for offshore oil and gas development. The only states on the Atlantic coast that were included in this plan are Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. All other Atlantic governors told the federal government no. So did the Pacific states of Washington, Oregon, California, and Hawaii. Now the process is currently underway by the Department of Interior's Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, BOEM, to finalize the areas off our coast that will be leased to oil companies in 2021. As a former offshore drilling engineer, I know firsthand that the onshore industrialization and offshore risks that come with seismic testing and oil and gas drilling are not worth the unsubstantiated benefits that have been touted by the oil lobby. The oil lobby has lied to our elected officials, and they have lied to us. They say, don't worry, there's only gas out there and gas is safe. However, the truth is that there's likely to be both oil and gas offshore, and drilling for any of it is not safe. In fact, the oil companies want to drill in the deepest waters off our coast, which is the riskiest type of offshore drilling. We all know the damage that was done to the Gulf Coast by the BP Deepwater Horizon disaster. Do you know that the oil lobby is currently fighting to have Congress not institute the safety regulations that were recommended by the National Commission on Offshore Drilling, contained in this report to the President in 2011? The oil companies say that these regulations are too expensive. Yet this last July, BP agreed to pay $18.7 billion to settle Deepwater Horizon federal and state claims, bringing total costs of that disaster to nearly $54 billion. 11 men died in the Deepwater Horizon disaster in 2010. It was not a fluke. Offshore drilling and production is not safe. We were reminded of that just 2 weeks ago again, when another 29 people were killed in the Caspian Sea on a gas platform there. The oil lobby says we need oil and natural gas for energy independence, yet our country is already energy independent because of shale gas and fracking over the last decade. In fact, the United States is the largest producer of natural gas in the world, and we have 80 to 100 years supply. And yet that's not enough for the oil lobby. Last week, they got the U.S. House of Representatives to overturn a ban on exporting crude oil that has been in place since the 1970s. It's likely that the Senate will vote to support that ban, to overturning that ban by the end of this week. So why do oil companies want to drill in the Atlantic and put our coast in harm's way? So they can increase their profits. Finally, I want to share with you that as a volunteer with SODA, I've personally made presentations to over 500 people in these last 10 months, and I can count on one hand the number of people I have met who support offshore drilling. The citizens of this state weren't asked. No one gets to vote on this. We need our governor to say, I was wrong. The citizens of South Carolina do not want this. We want out. SODA made offshore drilling an issue in this year's Georgetown City Council election, and those who supported drilling lost the election. We have a say in this matter, but only if we speak up. Speak up to the Department of the Interior, to our governor, and to our elected representatives in Washington, here in Columbia, in our counties, and in our towns. It's critical that you speak up and let your voice be heard. Now I'd like to introduce Frank Knapp, who's President and CEO of the South Carolina Small Business Chamber of Commerce. Frank?
So, Robert, you really weren't looking to get these back with the oysters.
Pardon?
Sometimes people are going to want to take these oysters home.
Oh, yeah. You're welcome.
I'm Frank Knapp. I'm President and CEO of the South Carolina Small Business Chamber of Commerce. Back in January of this year, we became one of the first organizations in the state to come out in opposition to offshore oil drilling and seismic testing. Since then, the opposition has turned into a large chorus of residents and small businesses I just want to make 4 points today. First, coastal tourism in South Carolina is a small business industry. Offshore seismic testing and drilling is a threat to our thriving coastal tourism economy. That kind of industry is simply incompatible with why tourists come here. They come here for the great beaches, the natural wetlands, the wildlife, the sports fishing, the unique and historic coastal cities and towns. In addition, our struggling fishing industry would not survive the inevitable oil spill. 2, anyone who's ever tried to get a small business to sign publicly anything that is even close to being controversial knows it's extremely difficult to do. Yet in only a short period of time, over 430 businesses in this state have signed on to a letter to Governor Haley asking her to oppose efforts to test and drill for oil off our coast. South Carolina small businesses don't want an oil industry here. It's simply not who we are. 3, the data is actually very clear that there's far more oil off our west coast than here off of our coast. Yet offshore drilling is prohibited on the west coast. So if offshore drilling over the coast of California is not allowed, then we think that we ought to have the same type of protection for the South Carolina's coastal economy. If it's not right for the west coast, it's not right for the east coast. Last point. Thanks to the report released yesterday by the Center for a Blue Economy, we now know that the petroleum industry has been using a deceptive report that they produced a few years ago to promise thousands of jobs for South Carolinians and great revenue for our state government. The petroleum industry and the Gulf Coast businesses that are pushing this snake oil have duped our politicians. It is now time for our elected leaders to say no to this dirty industry that threatens our coastal small businesses and start opposing federal efforts that will allow for the destructive seismic testing and drilling off of our shore. I'm going to turn it back over to who? You're up next.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sandra Bundy. I'm from Earl Zimmer. I'm a broker in charge of BNP Incorporated, and I've been in the real estate business for 15 years. I'm a member of the Realtor Association of the Greater PD and the Coastal Carolina Association of Realtors, where I currently serve on the community outreach and legislative committees. I've grown up with the coast of South Carolina and had the distinct honor of knowing some of our great coastal pioneers who recognized and capitalized on opportunities to raise their families and build thriving businesses along our shoreline. My heritage began in the creeks of Merle's Inlet and in the Atlantic, where our family opened the door to fishing in the Gulf Stream on headboats that were the first of their kind on the East Coast. Ironically, the success of our family business was made possible by oil and gas development in the early 60s in the Gulf Coast. Crew boats can get you where you needed to go really fast, but our family sought out this type of vessel for a very different reason. Taking passengers out on day trips in the Gulf Stream was an instant hit in 1967. Within a few seasons, many other captains brought similar boats to Merle's Inlet, making it the fishing mecca of the East Coast. Thousands of anglers had access to Gulf Stream waters 65 miles offshore. These are the same deep waters where much of our commercial and recreational fishery today we put at risk on the outer continental shelf. There are many stories of determination, hard work, and sacrifice that build our coast into what it is today. My hometown is known as the seafood capital of South Carolina. The economic impact of the Merle's Inlet estuary alone is $720 million, according to a study completed in 2013 by CCU Center for Economic and Community Development. $249 million of our inlet's value was attributed to the draw of the marsh. The most remote possibility of an oil spill is not worth the risk of our estuaries, ocean resources, or coastal economy. That is why I'm here today to ask Governor Haley to reconsider her position on seismic testing and oil and gas development in the Atlantic. As a real estate broker, I provide my clients with information so they can make informed decisions. Prior to the Deepwater Horizon disaster, the National Association of Realtors reported a 9.8% increase in existing home sales compared to June of 2009. After the spill, realtors in some areas along the Gulf Coast reported 20% declines in home sales. A survey conducted on the association membership between July 6th and 14th of 2010 on the oil spill's impacts on transactions revealed a large number of lost sales as a direct result of the spill. In Alabama, 68% reported the loss of one or more transactions. The coastal tourist destinations of Gulf Shores and Orange Beach were hit particularly hard. Home sales dropped across the Gulf Coast, even in areas with no physical damage. The perception of oiled beaches kept away visitors and buyers who normally build rental units during the summer season. The 2013 Clear Skies Dark Water study on oceanfront condominium prices in tourist areas of coastal Alabama noted a $25 per square foot decrease in condo prices as a result of the spill. This year, along the Grand Strand, oceanfront condo sales exceeded $229 million to date, and there has been over 1 million square feet of space sold. A majority of these units are used as vacation properties. On December 5th, 2015, the Associated Press reported South Carolina is finally back from the Great Recession. The USC economists also emphasized the need for our state to focus on tourism to increase our population by drawing visitors who often become residents. Right now, our beaches rank at the top of the tourist destinations, and we can continue that trend, but a wrong move in oil and gas development can put thousands of small businesses at risk. We have and can create a better legacy for South Carolina, and I challenge Governor Haley to do just that by changing her position on seismic testing and drilling in the Atlantic and finding alternative solutions for creating jobs and prosperity without jeopardizing our livelihoods and irreplaceable coastal resources. I'd like to now introduce you to Rick Bowman, founder of Merle Summit Seafood.
I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you today. I began fishing and selling my catch to local restaurants under the name of Merle's Inlet Seafood in 1967, and have continued to evolve with the industry ever since. I'm here to tell you how I feel about seismic testing and offshore drilling for oil and gas. And the first thing I'd like to do is agree with each and every speaker who went before me. I think these ideas are absolutely ridiculous. I think that there is no logic or common sense behind them at all. I do know that these proposals reek of money, big money lobbying and campaign contributions in large figures and absolutely nothing else except for the lies and misinformation being fomented by the proponents, and there's lots of them. So I'd like to ask everyone here today to examine these issues solely based on the facts and common sense, not a bunch of API malarkey. First, I want you to know that the BP Horizon disaster is having a continued profound effect worldwide on the seafood industry. Going on 6 years now after the event. The Gulf is not back to business as usual, as the thousands of BP TV commercials you've seen would indicate. Fisheries statistics are easily accessed online and paint a totally different picture. Louisiana DNR statistics show a drastic landings decline in 7 of 8 critical commercial and recreational fish species. Depending on the landings figures that you use, yellowfin tuna, the most important money fish harvested in the Gulf, are down from 53 to 70% since the spill. These things affect availability and prices for seafood all over the world. Gulf fishermen and seafood businesses continue to suffer very grave consequences, and we suffer here and all over the world as a result. Imagine the damage to our coastal economy if this disaster occurred in the Atlantic. And as long as human error and negligence are a possibility, the level of technology employed is really not that relevant. Millions of local jobs would be negatively affected. For many years, tourism and property values would suffer severely, and so would state tax revenue. Since the Horizon spill, Gulf seafood products have been in very short supply and at a declined level of quality at the highest prices in history. 80% of all the oysters consumed in the United States traditionally come from the Gulf. Even today, the prices that spiked at the time of the disaster have shown little downward movement at all. I'm personally cognizant that seafood companies who serve Gulf resorts have had to resort to importing oysters from other areas of the country, thereby further affecting the market prices worldwide. We should also take into account that the fossil fuel industries will be no more than a fringe market, if that, before production would even begin off our coast. The most recent financial data available from Big Oil confirms this. Record declines and employee layoffs, with one of the biggest worldwide crude producers pledging to halt offshore drilling very soon. You may have heard that Toyota recently pledged to eliminate fossil fuel vehicles from their product line by 2050. That's only 15 years after production would begin off our coast. Porsche has announced that they will be producing electric sports cars that go from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds by the end of this decade. Audi, Volkswagen, and others are moving quickly in the same direction. Touching briefly on the issue of seismic testing, the Mid-Atlantic and South Atlantic Fisheries Management Councils, which are supposed to advise governments and make regulations, have both expressed very serious concerns over seismic testing off our coast. And as previously mentioned, it's illegal off the West Coast. Several dozen of the world's leading ocean scientists have also echoed these sentiments in a letter to President Obama. Over 30 Washington congressmen from both sides of the aisle have come together to oppose seismic. And last week, 200 nations came together with a unanimous accord to global warming. The CNN headline for this article announcing this accord stated, "This is the end of fossil fuel." On a local level, and more important to our visit to Columbia today, every single coastal hamlet, fishing village, tourist town, city, and industrial port in South Carolina, and even the city of Columbia, has resolved through their elected officials against seismic testing and offshore drilling. Not one coastal town has resolved for. So I'm here today to respectfully request that as a result of all I've mentioned and much more, that Governor Haley reverse course and remove South Carolina from this plan. I could go on forever about it, but in respect for your kind attendance and your attention, I will now introduce our next speaker, Ms. Kathy Livingston, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to all of us. My name is Kathy Livingston. I live in a rural community called Awendaw, South Carolina. It lies in the Bulls Bay Chamber region, which encompasses the Francis Marion National Forest, Cape Romaine National Wildlife Refuge, the Santee Coastal Reserve, which is a state-managed land, and many small rural heritage communities. I have a degree a university degree in resource planning and ecology. I've worked as an ecologist, biologist, naturalist, and I currently own a company called Nature Adventures Outfitters, and we take through over 19,000 paddlers a year. Most of these are tourists that come to our beautiful state of South Carolina by choice, because it has become a major nature-based tourism destination. I'm also here to represent the Nature-Based Tourism Association of our state, the South Carolina Paddle Sports Industry Association of our state, as well as the Bulls Bay Chamber. These two entities, the nature-based tourism and paddle sports industry, hold together over 75 members. These are businesses, small mom-and-pop businesses. These are little larger kayak companies like mine that employ In the summertime, I have 35 to 40 employees, all giving back to our state's economy. This is a billion-dollar industry. Nature-based tourism is an incredible economy, sustainable economy in our state. People come here to hike, to bird, to fish, to kayak, for many, many reasons because of our diverse ecosystems here in this small little state. The impact of offshore seismic testing alone has been proven to be very harmful and detrimental to our endangered species. It deafens them, it harms them in many ways, especially our state mammal, the eastern bottlenose dolphin. And as you know, we have right whales that come along our shoreline and breed as well. Our sea turtles, all of them being endangered status, are absolutely subject to this harm as well. The United States Navy has conducted studies that directly reflect this harm, as well as Douglas Nowacek's research from Duke University. He's a professor of marine science and ecology who is a bioacoustics expert. Although there are several more research citations that confirm this, without a doubt, this will absolutely devastate our wildlife population, and especially our marine biodiversity. Not only would the seismic testing do this damage in our industry, it would be worse if South Carolina were to have another Deepwater Horizon incident. As mentioned before, 11 humans were killed in that disaster, not to mention the hundreds that are still suffering dire effects from that exposure and harm. Thousands of seabirds, sea turtles, marine mammals were killed or were completely covered in oil. Some of my biologists went there to volunteer during that disaster, and we saw it firsthand. And that's why it just brings me to tears to think that we would even think of subjecting our coast to this possibility. The aquaculture businesses, as were mentioned prior to me being up here, were also very devastated. The small communities of Allendale, McClellanville, the coastal communities, Beaufort, we rely on a very healthy, sustainable economy of shellfish and aquaculture. The results of the Horizon spill were so devastating that there's irreversible damage to the marshes and estuaries. Irreversible. They'll never be the same. They can never be what they were in supporting that diverse ecosystem. The nature-based tourism industry in the Deepwater Horizon area ceased to exist for a couple of years. It's trying to build back an economy, but I have paddle sports friends that lost their businesses, their mom and pop operations. South Carolina's coast is home to the Ace Basin National Wildlife Refuge, which encompasses the Ashepoo, Combahee, Edisto rivers, where over 12,000 acres of conservation easements were given by landowners into conservancy because they love our precious state of South Carolina. It is also home to the Cape Romaine National Wildlife Refuge, which has over 67,000 acres of barrier islands that are completely undeveloped and protected. Of those 67,000, over 29,000 of those acres are a Class 1 wilderness area. This is a designation not to be taken lightly. This means it has the cleanest water, the cleanest air, the cleanest environment possible under federal designation. With the size of our state being relatively small, we have the largest watershed of any state on the eastern United States border. I worked as a naturalist with National Audubon Society about 30 years ago and learned of all of the impacts that our watersheds have in this tiny little state. With nature-based tourism being a major economic factor in our state, the Nature-Based Tourism Association, the South Carolina Paddle Sports Industry Association, the Bulls Bay Chamber of Commerce, all of these entities oppose offshore drilling and seismic testing. We really feel it's important for Governor Haley to remove South Carolina from the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management's plan, and it literally is a matter of life or death for us in our state of South Carolina. I would like to invite Governor Haley, her constituents, and anyone else that would like to join us on a wonderful paddling outing with any of the outfitters in our state of South Carolina to look at the incredible resources that we have that need to be further protected and not destroyed. Thank you for your time, and I would also like to invite Robert Barber back up here to wrap up this session.
Thank you so much, Kathy. After today, we will continue to collect signatures from other businesses and other individuals at www.don'tdrill.com. And after we finish here in just a few minutes, our speakers will be open and available for some questions. In summary, we South Carolina business leaders oppose offshore seismic testing and drilling because the risks outweigh the benefits. And why is that? Because of harm to our coastal tourism-based economy, which employs more than 80,000 South Carolinians and contributes more than $7 billion annually to the state. Harm to our hospitality and restaurant industry. Selfishly, harm to my 65-year-old family seafood restaurant. Harm to our real estate industry. Harm to our commercial and recreational fishing industry, and especially my favorite oysters. Harm to our new economy, technology-enabled businesses. Harm to our environment and to our South Carolina natural way of life. When we engage in this, this is a forever decision. Once leases are given to oil companies, they can potentially hold them for decades to come. Witness offshore California, where they experienced a pipeline spill last May, which caused state parks to close and thousands of vacationers to change their Memorial Day plans away from the beach. The oil was from an area that was originally leased over 50 years ago. Once the decision is made to open up the Atlantic Ocean to oil and gas development, Pandora's box is open and cannot be closed. We give up our resources so that the oil companies can export our oil and gas to other countries. Our coastal communities and businesses take the risk, and the oil companies get the profits. We do not want this to be our legacy. And once again, we call on Governor Haley to make sure that South Carolina is not included in the federal government's near-term plans for drilling. Thank you for coming today and for your kind attention.